Okay, here I am, still at Massanutten, and this is like number 4 this morning. Um, I've been talking about the formation of the um, Planet B Cooperative. I didn't touch on the Planet B part of the name. Uh, Basically, what we're doing is building a resilient system for humans to exist in face of potential climate change so devastating it destroys the biosphere in a way that wipes out most of land-based um, life forms. So trees burned to the ground because of forest fires, um, soil unusable because of pollution and so on. The air doesn't. Basically, it's that dystopian future in which all of a sudden humans are starving throughout the planet because they have no source of food because we've destroyed the ecosystem to the point where we can't grow it anymore. The temperature's risen too high. And yes, we can try and keep up with it and breed new kinds of crops, but that's solving the wrong problem. What we want to do is build very compact food growth capabilities on these habitats that are floating in the ocean. So you basically raise all the food you need. And with the biosynthesis and biochemistry advancements, I just recently read about a um, research group that has come up with a way of using a certain kind of mushroom. The molecules from the mushroom stem grow extremely fast and have high protein content and are basically a nice substitute platform for making meat-like substances. So they have examples where they make a chicken breast like meat out of this mushroom. And they can use the technology that's used in a brewery, basically. So you put these big vats, you put the chemicals needed to grow this stuff in the vat, and you come back a day later, and there's 10,000 tons or 10,000 pounds of it in the vat that you can then just process into little burgers and so on. Now, this is a kind of at an infancy for a new technology domain, but those are the kinds of things that are key to basically disruptive changes in the social system, because this will give us a way of providing all the people that would move onto these platforms a healthy diet, because the other things you can grow in hothouses are vegetables, which are actually better for you than the cereals and the sugars and so on. So we build a diet based on really high quality food that's all easily grown in hothouses. And these platforms, basically, the mental model that you should have is, they talked about 40 acres and a mule for everybody at the end of the Civil War as reparations. That never actually happened. It was a nice ideal, but that was never going to happen because of the racism of the time. Um, so anyway, but this concept in general of, if people have like 10,000 cubic feet of climate controlled environment in which you can have lighting to grow as much plant life as in plant matter as you want, and electrical energy and water, all the resources are made available to that 10,000 cubic meter cube that is your space in this habitat. Um, and then you get several robots to help do the work. Um, and now, if everybody has that as their configuration, they can then start saying, well, I don't really need 10,000 cubic feet to do the things I need. I only need this much. And I'd like to have a community center that I can go to socialize with other people. So I'm going to take my budget, part of the budget, and put it into that, and other people contribute a few hundred square feet or cubic feet, and pretty soon you have a nice community center or a restaurant or some other business form that where you collaborate because you need more space than one person can have. So, and this is a seed for how to think about budgeting, because we're basically moving from a society that was designed around the notion of scarcity, that there was limited resources and limited amount of energy in the form of humans doing work, and maybe an occasional ox or something to pull a plow or pull a cart, but basically everything was just manual labor. And I grew up in that kind of a work environment. Nobody wants to be doing that. They want to be able to have a machine do most of that work, and then they can enjoy life a little bit more. So this is not, and also the other thing was there was a lack of learning. People really didn't know much more than what they could learn from other people who were living in the same kind of environment and how they did things. Even if it was stupid, they just repeat the same mistake because they didn't have a notion of structured learning, of critical thinking about problems. A lot of superstition, a lot of fear of the others. And what we're doing is stripping it all away and saying, why can't we have the similar thing that you find when you get on a cruise ship with people from around the planet? None of you know each other, but they've built social culture where everybody can enjoy themselves for a period of a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. And you form bonds with people from different cultures. You learn about different cultures, and you learn to coexist peacefully, and we all benefit from that experience. And so that's a really powerful organizational structure that was created for profit. These were for-profit companies, but there's no reason that we couldn't do the same thing in the form of cooperatives, where everybody who's on the boat owns the boat, and they all work together in the same way people work together in cooperatives that produce wine, or cooperatives that produce orange juice and distribute it around the country. Cooperatives that generate electricity for rural communities. That whole thing was not, see, this is where we know that the neoliberals' notion that everything should be done for maximizing profit is broken fundamentally, because those electrical cooperatives improved the lives of hundreds of or tens of millions back then. I don't know, I think it's 35 million people get their electricity from electrical cooperatives, something like that. A substantial portion of the population. But they wouldn't be served by the commercial providers because they didn't see profit in doing so. Enough profit. They could just keep building more and more plants to give power to industry that was willing to pay them higher electric rates. But the farmers basically strung the wires to their farm to the neighbors, and then the neighbor to the next neighbor, and by cooperating they could basically create the equivalent of the electrical grid that was powering cities, but with a much lower density population. So, well, I kind of, what else did I talk about here? All right, I've wandered off again, but the general idea continues. This theme is so repetitive because they all intersect, and I have this vision of going in and giving a lecture, and I can't, because it just comes out like this, and that's why I'm looking for people to collaborate with, people who are better at organizing thoughts to communicate them to a broad audience, and do a persuasive argument for that. I think I have a grasp on all the technology that we need, and a general idea of how I'd like to see the research be organized. But basically, oh yeah, that was another big thing. I'll start it in the next video. I'm going to talk about how the Planet B Cooperative is going to basically be creating its own currency that's going to be energy that will eventually be produced by the cooperative. And we can start funding the research for this cooperative by doing we need a maker's, what do they call it? The GoFundMe kind of thing, to get some initial money to be able to pay staff to write all these ideas down and flesh it out and start working on the software infrastructure for managing millions of people being part of a cooperative, an energy cooperative that will provide them with essentially, most likely if you're on land, you'll have anhydrous ammonia to deliver to you, and then you can use that. Or you can trade that anhydrous ammonia on the market, in a marketplace where people will sell products based on how much energy was required to make those products. And this cascades down. You just say, and what I envision is I go to a college professor saying I need research done to create a 3D printer that will print this size device using this kind of geopolymer composite material, and it has to have these characteristics. How much energy will it require for me to have this production line operate? And that includes how much energy is it going to require for you to be able to create all the equipment and design all the equipment and hire people, and they get energy budgets. So we're doing this all as an energy budget. And that energy budget I'm going to give you initially will be extremely small, but over time we're going to double it yearly eventually. And the intent here is that in 15 years or so, by 2050, I think it's quite feasible, we'll have enough of these energy production platforms in the ocean to meet everybody's on the planet's energy demand in the form of renewable energy that comes from, essentially what we'll be doing is taking the nuclear warheads that are sitting around the world, melt them down into, or oxidize them, I should say, and take those oxides and put them in, not oxides, salts. So it'll be like uranium chloride, and that gets mixed in with other salts like sodium chloride in a vat, and it eventually, if you put enough of the uranium in, it'll go critical, and that's all that's required in order to create a huge heat source that can then be used to drive chemical processes. The one we're going to start with is a direct heat and with a little bit of electricity, but not much, electrolysis, a high temperature electrolysis of water and nitrogen gas and running it through a catalyst to produce anhydrous ammonia, which can be used as a fuel source, as well as a very useful chemical product for manufacturing and agriculture for food growth. So it's a fundamental chemical that's made in hundreds of millions of tons per year quantities already. So there's a ready market for this. If we're looking for cash, we can just sell a bunch of it from our platforms. If we need to buy something in a commercial, or in the legacy economic system. So that becomes our currency instead of oil, which was what the oligarchs in Russia used when the Soviet Union collapsed and they stole all the oil from the people of the country. Yeah, great move. Thank you, Reagan, for screwing that one up. Okay, I'm going to regroup my thoughts for a minute.